Thanks for joining us in our channel. Make sure you're in a spot where you can relax and enjoy the story. Get your popcorn ready, and let's start. This is a two-part story. He found out his wife was cheating on him when he came home early one day, and upon checking a GPS app he saw that his wife was in an airport hotel. He called her and caught her lying about where she is, so he decided to go to her location. Now let's start the story from the beginning. It is impossible to build one's own happiness on the unhappiness of others. Desaku Akita. My name is Tyler Clinton and I'm going to tell you my story. Before I begin, no, I'm not even a distant relative of the former president, although the irony of his behavior while in office isn't lost on me. Pondering why your spouse would abandon fidelity to her vows while claiming to want to stay in the marriage is a question with which I never dreamed I'd wrestle. Yet here I am, seated on my back porch on a cool May evening, waiting for my soon-to-be ex-wife to storm through the door, having just been served divorce papers at her place of employment. I have some idea how she will react, but I'm not completely sure because I think she's lost her marbles. The discovery of her cheating happened 3 weeks ago on April 28th. I'll come back to that in a moment. The choice of our back porch is because it is private. We live on a 2-acre lot, so even if there is some shouting it will be tough for neighbors to hear. Also, a private eye is parked around the corner, surveilling what is about to unfold. He's there for both our protection, just in case either of us gets wound up so tight we snap. Lindsay, Lynn to me, is an intelligent and beautiful woman. We met at grad school in Chicago. I was working on an MBA in medical and health services. She was completing her CRNA, which, for readers not working in the medical world, means she was studying to become a nurse anesthetist. She worked neonatal for 2 years. Long hours, longer emotional drain. NAS work relatively normal hours, usually 6 a.m., 5 p.m. 4 days a week, for much better pay and less trauma. Lynn's only potentially significant flaw was she becomes bored easily and is always looking for the next thing. We'd be enjoying a concert and she'd be working on plans for the next weekend. Whatever was new was also a temptation. Whether it was a new app, new friend or new restaurant, her interest was always piqued. We talked it over during our courtship, and I made it clear that new was okay with me, but when it came to marriage, I was a traditionalist. I believe you could find new every day of your relationship with the same person over many years, if you put your heart into it. She never gave me reason to suspect she disagreed. To the extent that her slightly fickle personality was prone to wandering from familiar to new, I insisted we sign a prenuptial agreement. She wasn't thrilled with the idea, and felt it was an insult to her character. I explained it was a two-way agreement that protected her every bit as much as it protected me. She relented and signed. It was straightforward. 50-50 on wealth accumulated during the marriage, with each keeping 100% of what they brought in. 80-20 split if the breakup was caused by adultery. To be honest, after we signed it, I don't think either of us gave it another thought until recently. After being wed, we moved from Chicago to Des Moines, Iowa. Sexy, huh? Don't knock it until you've been there. Low cost of living, strong economy, vibrant and growing downtown urban center, and excellent career opportunities in healthcare. Cold winters, with mostly mild spring and fall seasons. Summers that can vary from downright pleasant to almost, but not quite, unbearably hot. Unlike our neighbors to the south in St. Louis, Des Moines doesn't have high humidity. Even on hot summer days, the evenings always cool off quite nicely. To top it all off, the sweet corn in July and August is to die for. And it is the birthplace of Ben Silberman, creator of Pinterest. What more could you need? 8 years in, we both had jobs we loved, a wonderful home, neighbors, and friends we truly enjoyed, and I thought until 3 weeks ago, a strong marriage. I say strong, not perfect. Nobody has a perfect marriage because there are no perfect people inhabiting the planet. We fought from time to time. I must try and squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom guy, and she's haphazard about it. She wants the dishes done and the kitchen clean every night. I'm happy loading the dishwasher for 3 or 4 days before running it. Yes, like every other couple in America, we could fight over stupid shit. But far more often, we take long walks in the evening, and have longer talks on the screened-in porch. Quick weekend trips to a cabin hideaway or a favorite concert in Chicago, Minneapolis or Dallas were not unusual. We enjoyed each other sexually, and we were open and honest about what we liked or didn't enjoy. At least that was the impression I was under. We both agreed sex is as much mental as it is physical, and, I thought, had fun making the most of our intimate moments together. Both 34, we knew kids were not too far off and looked forward to being mom and dad whenever children arrived. By now, you may be wondering, am I really a dud in the sack and just unwilling to admit it? Is Lynn absolutely stunning and hit on by every man that comes along? Have we been toying with the notion of an open marriage? Did I miss warning signs earlier in our relationship that Lynn would turn slut? Had I cheated on her, so she is just getting some revenge sex? Is her lover hung like a horse, a Greek Adonis that she couldn't escape? Is he an older dominant guy who preyed on her daddy issues? Is she trading up financially? Let me take them in order. Lynn seems genuinely happy with our sex life. Unless she's the best corn actress on the planet, it appears I can rock her sexual world when I put my mind to it. I had a handful of sexual encounters prior to meeting her. Never been called the best ever, but I worked hard to give as good as I got, and I never heard complaints. She is a very good-looking woman with a quick wit and strong mind. She's Irish-Italian, 5'8", light brunette with a slender build, and better than average boobs. Dark green eyes and a killer smile. In my opinion, her long legs and firm bum are her best physical features. Guys look, a few approach. She's never given me reason to think she'd accept any offers. Come to think of it, I've rarely seen her flirt. Not hardly. I can't recall any warning signals, but if I'm that dense, I guess I got what I deserved for being asleep at the switch. Maybe I should have been more tuned into her fascination with new. Never touched another woman beyond a friendly hello or goodbye hug since we became a couple. I think an honest reply is, he is handsome, but I wouldn't say drop-dead gorgeous. He is about my height, 6'1", about the same build, around 180 pounds. Fit and solid but not ripped. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Only saw him with no clothes on video, and he seemed about as big as me in that department. Around 7 inches when hard, which it most definitely was. He's only 28, a med student who has been rotating through the OR for the last 2 months. He'll have money someday, but since she clears 100K and I make about twice that much, can't see cash, fancy cars or a lavish house being a temptation. He won't start raking in serious bucks for at least another decade. So, as you can imagine, I really have no idea how we got here, but maybe I should share what has transpired in the last 3 weeks. It was the last week in April and I was out of town at a medical administrators conference in Kansas City for 3 days. I was supposed to be gone 4, but when I looked at the seminar offerings on the last day, there wasn't much that grabbed my attention. It had already been a good week. The first day I connected with 3 other folks in my region who had similar positions. We ended up forming a small team and getting together each evening to compare notes. Enjoyed some good camaraderie, did some networking, exchanged contact information, and laughed over a few beers. Late on day 3 I let them know I was headed out first thing in the morning. Since it is less than a 3-hour drive, I'd skipped the pain of air travel and drove myself. Interstate 35 is a relatively quiet drive with less traffic than most highways. Passed the time listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast on World War I both ways. KC has an amazing World War I museum, thanks to Missouri's only president. Carlin gave me a little context before I took the tour prior to the first session of the seminar. President Harry Truman, by the way, for those of you ignorant of flyover country. Since I drove, I could depart at my leisure. Because I thought I was heading home to a loving wife who would be on her first day of a 3-day break, I rose early and was on the road by 5 a.m. My intention was to wake her up around 8 a.m. with Starbucks, followed by morning sex. Or, morning sex, followed by Starbucks. The order wasn't really that important to me. When I arrived home, Lynn's car wasn't in the driveway. She drives a 2018 Crystal Black Pearl Honda Accord which she never pulls into the garage unless it is raining. It hadn't rained in a week. If it's not in the driveway, she's not home. I was a bit confused. We work out at the same gym, Lifetime Fitness, so she wouldn't be out for a run. She always sleeps in on her first day off rotation, but entering the house, it didn't look like she had been home last night. The bed was made, which it never is unless it is Saturday, laundry day. There was no sign of leftovers in the fridge from the previous evening's dinner. This was a head-scratcher. I picked up the panties and could immediately smell the sex. I almost lost my cookies in that instant. Trying to think clearly, I decided some pictures and video of the room could prove helpful. I'm no lawyer, or I'd have known a 2-bit ambulance chaser could get this kicked out on the suggestion it had all been staged by me. Ignorant of this legal nuance, I scanned the room for about 60 seconds of video narrating as I went. I am in room 319 of the Des Moines Airport Marriott. It is 9:55 a.m. on Thursday, April 28, 2022. I am in the hotel room my wife Lindsay Clinton reserved and paid for with her American Express Gold Card, number 5551 to 733,918 45,220. Don't ask me why I memorize card numbers, I just do. She checked in last night with a medical school student from her hospital named Justin Banks. It appears from inspecting the site and smell of the room that my wife and Justin have engaged in intense sexual activity between last night and this morning. I witnessed them leaving the Hampton about 15 minutes ago. They were kissing and holding hands. I have 2 pictures to verify this. I quickly looked in the bathroom, but there wasn't much to see there. Before retreating out the door, I decided to take her panties with me. If nothing else, I could get them tested for DNA, not that I would be surprised by what I'd learn. It might also throw Lynn for a loop, not being able to locate them. As Beth and I entered the elevator, I began to lose control. Tears were rolling down my face. Beth, a good solid Iowa woman, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "I'm very sorry, Mr. Clinton." We exited the elevator into the lobby, and I began to reach for my wallet. "Don't even think about it, son," she said in a tone that left no room for debate. I smiled, thanked her, and said, "I know I don't need to say this, but if you have any interaction with them, please don't give them any hint I was here." The corners of her mouth turned up in a smirking sort of way. She winked and said, "Never seen you or heard of you in my entire life, and I'm offended that you would suggest otherwise." Well, as you can imagine, I had come to the end of my plan. What to do now? I've already admitted to my lack of legal knowledge. However, even my limited understanding of divorces in the USA warned me I may get ducked over if I went for divorce too quickly, the prenuptial agreement notwithstanding. That was the bad news. The good news was I wasn't expected home until late Friday afternoon. I had time to think and plan. Since I was on the south side of town, I drove another 30 or so miles southeast to the small town of Winterset, and 40 minutes later found myself at Rudy's restaurant on John Wayne Drive. Winterset is the Duke's birthplace, and they even have a small museum in his honor. I know this because my dad, who could quote every John Wayne movie from heart, had brought me and my brother here when we were kids. As I sat in a booth toward the back, I noticed a quote from his last film on the wall. In The Shootist, Wayne played an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, who determined to go out guns blazing with his boots on, instead of letting the terrible disease eat away at him until dead. I wouldn't be wronged, I wouldn't be insulted, and I wouldn't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them. I'm nowhere near the Duke fan my dad was. I'm more of a Clint Eastwood, the outlaw Josie Wales kind of guy, but I found myself chuckling, ducking a right pilgrim. I said this out loud to nobody in particular, but the waitress approaching my table heard my best Wayne impersonation. She just rolled her eyes and replied in her best Duke, "So, you want some grub, young fella?" I ordered coffee and a big breakfast. Doing something as simple as enjoying a meal helped me feel better. As I sat and ate, I pulled up and read a handful of articles on spouses that cheat. According to the experts, this probably wasn't a one-off. No way they would be that chummy if it was a drunken lust-filled one-night stand. Statistics showed overwhelmingly women in the USA who cheat on their husbands rarely have a one-and-done sexual experience. More than likely, this had been going on for some time, but I had no proof. That had to change, so I began to make a list. No way I'm staying married to a cheater. Even if this was relatively new, I could forgive and maybe even still have some love in my heart, but all trust was gone for good. I would hire somebody to help me get some evidence. Even with the prenup, I needed to find rock-solid legal advice from somebody who knew their way around the financial side of the equation. I had to get tested for STDs. Justin Banks, one way or another, was going to get his. I had about 36 hours to get moving. I finished my breakfast and left the server a $50 tip for a $16 breakfast. At least one person in the greater Des Moines area was going to have a good day. Before I left the diner, I texted Lynn sorry, found my pen at the bottom of my satchel. A moment later she replied, "Lucky for you." I typed 6 words in response, "Duck you, you cheating slut witch." I didn't really do that, but it was awfully tempting. I simply replied, "Yep." 2 hours later I found myself in the offices of Templeton, Sharp and Sheffer. I'd met Templeton once at a fundraiser, and knew his practice handled family law. He took my call and listened quietly to my story. "I'm sorry to hear this, Mr. Clinton." "I appreciate that, Mr. Templeton. Please, call me Tyler." "Perfect, Tyler. I'm Edward, Ed to my friends and clients, so call me Ed." "Thank you, sir." "Tyler, I wouldn't jerk you around here. From a legal perspective your situation is less than favorable. No kids helps, but no fault means you might have to do counseling or engage with your spouse in an effort by the court to determine if the marriage really is broken. If the prenup was well written you may avoid coming out on the short end of the stick financially, but that remains to be seen. I want to refer you to my partner Eli Sharp. He's a pro in our shop when it comes to divorce and will do the best job for you. Let me put you through to his assistant Diane, and she'll get you set up." An hour later I was sitting in his office. I learned that Eli Sharp would live up to his name. A small guy, only 5'6" and maybe weighed in at 130 lbs. Soaking wet. I gathered he was an avid swimmer, had been since he was a kid. Held a couple of high school records back in his home state of Indiana. He still swam hard for an hour straight 6 mornings per week. After spending 10 minutes with a man anyone could tell he'd lived his life proving being small didn't mean you couldn't win the battle. He brought that attitude to his law practice. He listened carefully to what I knew so far, and asked a few clarifying questions, then offered some initial strategy. "Are they staying at the Hampton tonight?" I don't know. No worries, I can find that out, excuse me. He lifted his desk handset and spoke into it. Diane, get Molly on the phone and tell her I need to know if Lindsay Clinton is booked at the DSM Hampton Inn, room 319 through tomorrow morning. If she is, tell Mole, I need a full report by tomorrow noon and tell her not to miss anything. What? Yes, I know, that will piss her off, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? He returned the phone to his cradle. Molly Baker is the best pie this side of Chicago, because she was a pie in Chicago for 18 years before she chucked it and moved to Des Moines. The shit she saw in the Windy City would curl your toes. Anyway, if they are there tonight, we'll know plenty of details by tomorrow. He agreed I needed to get tested for STDs, and was worried about how long it would take to get the results. He assumed my wife would want to be sexually active with me to cover her tracks. I assured him I knew a couple of doctors in my line of work, and could probably get the tests expedited. The normal 5 to 10 days could probably get knocked down to 2 or 3. I called a pal, Dr. Stan Rosen, and asked him if I could stop by first thing in the morning. Eli also set me up with a forensic accountant in their practice for the next morning. He handed me a printout of what he knew I'd need to bring, including our prenuptial agreement. Finally, he said, if your wife changes her plans and comes home tonight, you can't be there to confront her. We'll address her as soon as we know the facts and the best way forward, but the earliest that will be is next week. If my guess is right, we'll probably need a couple of weeks to establish a pattern of infidelity. It may not help us in court, but it sure as hell won't hurt us. Most Des Moines magistrates still frown on cheating in a marriage, so you must play it cool. Be polite and kind. To guard your health, fake feeling ill if she wants to get physical anytime over the weekend. Otherwise, business as usual, got it? So, what you're saying is wringing her neck and taking a baseball bat to little Justin is off limits? Yeah, something like that. Seriously, can you do this? Anything stupid will sink us. Yes sir, you have my word. Good enough. We shook hands and I left. I'd like to say I'm good at compartmentalizing the pain in my life, but that would be a lie. I still had clothes from my trip, so I didn't need to go by the house. I went to a different gym, paid for a day membership, and worked out for about 2 hours until I could hardly stand. I then took a long steam and showered before checking into the downtown Hyatt, where I probably ordered room service. My order included a bottle of Maker's Mark. I turned off my phone after my second glass and put it in the closet, knowing once I was drunk, I would forget where it was. I didn't want to risk being drunk and calling my slut wife. Tears, anger, frustration, and more tears were my lot until I passed out. The next morning, I woke around 7 with the worst hangover I could remember since graduating from college. Forcing myself back to the gym, I took a long steam while sipping from my Yeti cup, which was packed with ice and a bit more Makers. Whoever came up with the morning after solution, bite the dog that bit, you must have known something, because after showering I felt almost human again. I spent an hour at a local Starbucks with my laptop organizing my financial report for the accountant. By 8:30 I was in Rosen's office. I explained the situation to him, and he drew my blood himself. I'll personally drop this at the lab and have them bring the results back to me. I'll have to put your name on it, but doctor, patient privacy will keep it as quiet as I can until you need it in court. Not your first rodeo, hot dog. Hell, no partner, he replied in his best Duke voice. I guess everyone around here loved John Wayne. I may get results by the end of business tomorrow, but it might be as late as Monday afternoon. Can only push the lab folks so much. No worries, thanks Stan. Back at S&S I sat down with Lois Montgomery. She picked everything apart, kicked all the tires, and looked under the hood of my financial life for the better part of 2 hours. It was about as pleasant as a prostate exam. When we were done, she sighed deeply and began to sum up. Well, Mr. Clinton, there is good news and bad. The prenup does cover 80% your assets in the case of divorce due to adultery. But no way I see you getting any better than a 50-50 split on the house. You could also avoid alimony, and obviously there will be no child support. But you may also have to split your retirement and savings. I'll work up a complete report and have it to Eli before the end of business today. I thanked her and headed upstairs to meet again with Eli Sharp. He was seated and in conversation with a woman who looked to be in her mid-40s. Molly Elkington was pleasant-looking with short brown hair, deep brown eyes, and a friendly smile. Her handshake was firm and her gaze penetrating. I felt I'd have to give an honest answer to any question she asked me. Her look was that commanding. Molly's jacket hung on the back of her chair, and I also noticed a sidearm attached to her belt. Note to self, I thought, never duck with this woman. After a moment of pleasantries, remember, we're always friendly, she got down to brass tacks. No easy way to say this, Mr. Clinton. Your wife is having a sexual relationship with the med student Justin Banks. I was able to place AV devices in their room at the Hampton, thanks to a very nice woman named Beth. She paused and looked up from her notes. By the way, Beth wanted me to mention she has a lovely niece in Cedar Bluffs if you're interested at some point in the future. I've turned some of the video into stills and enhanced the images to make your wife's identity unequivocally indisputable. They returned to the hotel around 1 p.m. yesterday afternoon and stayed there until 6 when they left for dinner. They ate at a hole-in-the-wall Chinese place in West Des Moines before returning to the Hampton around 8. According to my guys stationed in the lobby, they checked out around 10. Banks got into his car and she into hers. Mrs. Clinton headed home and is still there. She slid a large file folder across the table to me. There are pictures and a thumb drive with video. I'm not suggesting you look at it ever, but if you do, give yourself some time and space to deal with what you will see and hear. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Clinton. I hate cheaters for who they are and the damage they cause. I did a little digging on you as well, and it is clear to me you don't deserve how you're being betrayed by your wife. She and Sharp exchanged a few other comments and ideas about continuing for the next couple of weeks to establish a pattern. She then rose, threw on her jacket, shook my hand, wished me the best and headed out the door. Sharp went to his credenza and poured me a shot of Knob Creek Limited Edition to calm my nerves. I threw it back in one gulp and steadied myself for where our conversation was headed. We reviewed several aspects of the situation. I brought him up to speed on my blood work, and we discussed the financial aspects of the coming divorce. What is your endgame, Tyler? What I mean is, what is most important to you when the dust settles? I thought carefully for a moment. I want out ASAP. I can be patient and not do anything too stupid, but the idea of being anywhere around her makes me want to vomit. I really want you to do everything in your power to see the terms of the prenuptial agreement enforced. I can live with a split of the house and other small assets, but no way I want her to come out of this in a strong financial position at my expense. Next, I'd like to salvage what is left of my dignity. I want it known she has been unfaithful, not me. No wishy-washy irreconcilable differences horseshit. I'm not interested in going after the hospital since I work there too, and quite frankly, I see no culpability on the part of Unity Point Healthcare. However, I want it publicly known she and I are quits because she ducked Justin Banks behind my back. Finally, I want to hurt Banks. I don't know if you could convince the hospital it would be in their best interest to drop him from their program, but my deep desire is that he ends up driving a UPS truck in Goodland, Kansas, for the rest of his ducking days. Sharp responded to each. First, I think you're in pretty good shape with the prenup. I'm cautiously optimistic there. Secondly, we will make certain that word gets around on the reason for the split. However, that does not preclude the court ordering counseling to see if the marriage can be salvaged. Assuming your wife is not interested in divorce, I would be dumbfounded if her attorney doesn't go for that. They will probably be aggressive if for no other reason than to drag it out in the hopes they can soften you up and get you to change your mind. Finally, you need to temper your hopes on damaging Banks' career. You are correct, the hospital may cut their losses, especially if entering students sign any pledge pertaining to behavior while enrolled in the program. However, I wouldn't pin my hopes on that. Tyler, you're going to have to go home in the next day or so. You can perhaps create an excuse to stay away for most of the weekend, but soon you must head back and play happy husband, as if your life depended on it. One whiff it you know, and we risk her going on the offensive before we are fully prepared. I'm taking you at your word that you won't approach Banks in any manner. If you think you'll crack, I'll call Molly and have her put one of her guys on you for a while. I assured my attorney I'd behave accordingly even if I had to bite my lip until it bled. It was Friday early afternoon when I left Sharp's office. I sat in my car for 30 minutes trying to figure out how to go home and not let on. I saw no way of being successful, so I did the next best thing I could determine. I jumped back on Highway 35 south heading toward Kansas City. Lynn was expecting me home around 7. After driving about 90 minutes I pulled into the small town of Bethany, Missouri, and found a local tire shop. A 40-ish looking guy wearing a shirt with the name Mets stitched on it was behind the counter. He seemed content reading his Sports Illustrated, and not in a mood to be bothered with work late on a Friday afternoon. Like I gave a duck at this point. Help you? Yeah, I need 4 new tires. Ed sighed deeply in frustration. Apparently, the Chiefs' offensive line situation for next season had more appeal right now than making money. He got up and headed out to my car. These tires have at least another 10,000 miles left in them. You don't need new treads. He looked miffed. He had no idea what genuine miffed really looked like. Listen Ed, I'm a bit of a fanatic about my car, and I don't care about the price tag. Can you put new tires on or not? He muttered to himself as he went back inside and revved up his 2005 desktop. Not today, but I can have them here by 10 tomorrow morning. He then pulled out a small calculator. With shipping, installation and tax, it will run you $1,455. Fine, I said, do it. He looked at me like I had 3 heads but typed in the order. Okay, you said, see you in the morning. Not waiting for a reply, he went back to his SI article. I drove back out to the highway and checked into a Super 8 motel for the whopping sum of $78 per night. I plopped on the less than comfortable bed and called Lynn. You almost home, babe, I can't wait to see you. She was quite cheerful after 2 days of ducking little Justin. I'm sorry, Lynn, I lied, but I just blew out 2 tires running over some sheet that fell out of a semi on the highway. I'm stuck in some small Missouri town named Bethany. They can get me new tires but not until tomorrow. I wouldn't be home until mid-afternoon in case you want to have Justin over tonight and duck him in our marriage bed. Didn't say the last line out loud but sure wanted to. Damn, Ty, are you okay? Nothing hit the windshield or anything, did it? No, I'm fine, but I'm stuck with Taco Bell for dinner tonight and breakfast in the morning. I'm sorry for the delay, Lynn. Me too, but the important thing is you're okay. I miss you like crazy and was hoping to jump your bones tonight. I guess I can wait until tomorrow. Please be safe the rest of the drive and hurry home to your loving wife ASAP, Buster. I will, Lynn. I'm sorry, but I'm a bit worn out and still a little wind up from the blowout. I'm going to drink these 2 beers I picked up at the Jiffy Mart and hit the hay. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Okay, Ty, I love you. Good night, Lynn. I knew at some point I'd have to lie some more and return the I love you too with sincerity in my voice, but it wasn't going to be tonight. I had no way of knowing if she caught my lack of response, but at that point I didn't give a rat's bum. I moved over to the desk and opened the manila envelope Molly had given me. Their living color was my wife getting boned by the young Justin Banks in several positions. She was writing him in one. They were missionary in another, and a third had a closer image of her face, in what seemed to be the middle of an intenso, as he ducked her from behind, while she was bent over the desk. I went into the bathroom and hurled. After regaining my composure and brushing my teeth, I returned to the scene of the crime and inserted the thumb drive. After opening the program, I was met with my wife starring in a sleazy corn flick. She wore nothing, straddling Justin as he sat on the edge of the bed. They were doing a bit of role play to spice up their tryst. I almost hurled while watching the whole thing play out. They collapsed onto the bed with what was apparently the end of round 1. He lay on top of her for a moment, catching his breath, and then slid off her to the side, still having one leg and one arm draped over her back and bum. She was breathing heavily, nestling against him. She finally caught her breath. Duck, baby, you're so good. I love how you make me act so dirty. I love the way you use my kitty for your pleasure. Ty would never treat me like a slut. What you do to me drives me crazy. Damn, Lynn, you're the best I've ever had. You just get into it and go with the flow. Your body is amazing, but the way you talk and act just puts me over the top. I'm glad Ty is such a wimp and doesn't know how to truly please his wife. The last 4 months have been amazing, baby. I'll duck you anywhere, anytime. You can have me whenever you want a doctor. I'll need more of your treatments, of that, I'm sure. Justin pushed her over onto her back, pushed her legs apart, and went down on her. Had this been a corn flick with nameless actors, I supposed it could be exciting. But seeing my wife in this manner just made me nauseous. I shut the laptop, went over, dropped onto the bed, my world crashing down around me. After an hour of excruciating emotional pain, I began to feel a rage building up inside me. Yes, I was heartbroken. I didn't even know the woman in the video. She wasn't my Lynn. Her love for something new, something wild, had replaced whatever love she had for me. She was beyond selfish, and disrespect didn't begin to describe what I had just seen. My ire with Justin would certainly grow, but for the moment, I was filled with a white-hot anger toward the woman I thought loved me, and had committed to be my faithful wife. Over the 8 years of our marriage, and the year before while we were engaged, I'd never seriously contemplated being with another woman. I'm not saying I never looked or had a fleeting thought of. I wouldn't mind jumping her bones when I saw a good-looking woman. I am a man, just like any other guy. However, never had I dreamed of disregarding my vows to my wife or hurting her through adultery. If she wanted to fool around with whomever, she could have turned down my marriage proposal. I began to recall how bothered she was by the prenup. She was offended that I would even suggest she couldn't be trusted. Now, I discovered she was self-absorbed, only out for herself and her own pleasure. It seems she has no comprehension of the commitment I believe love demands. So yes, I was heartbroken by this revelation. But I was also infuriated. No way this was going to stand. No way this was the last word. The next couple of weeks would be tough, but Ducker, I was going to roleplay my part now, all with the intention of getting away from this witch ASAP. And Dr. Justin, her big stud, he was going to pay too. The next morning, I had a couple of fast food breakfast tacos. I hadn't lied about being stuck with Taco Bell. 2 cups of coffee helped wash away the taste as I headed over to meet my new friend and pick up 4 new tires. Ed was less grumpy this morning. He smiled as I walked in. I guess he figured out he could sell my current tires for a few $100 cash and pocket it without the IRS being any the wiser. He had a couple of deer heads mounted on the wall and a picture of him squatting next to one kill with his bow draped across his lap. Maybe he'd pick up a new compound bow before next season with the cash. Don't know why, but that thought made me feel a little better. By 11:30 a.m. I had 4 new tires and was out of excuses for heading home. During the drive I began to think of ways I could duck with Lynn's head. The thought of touching her was repulsive to me, but there was no way I'd escape having sex for the next couple of weeks, unless I made one stop just outside Des Moines before I headed home. I pulled into the driveway around 1:30. Lynn's car was there. I entered the front door and heard Siri playing some light jazz. Sounded like Norman Brown's Just Chillin' album. I came around the corner and entered the kitchen where Lynn was swaying to the music while rinsing a few dishes. She must not have heard me come in. Time to initiate Operation FWLH. Duck with Lynn's head, I quietly walked up behind her and suddenly draped my arms around her tightly so she couldn't get away and began sucking hard on her neck. She about jumped out of her skin. Ducked high, you scared the living shit out of me. Let me go, you rat. I just held on and kept feasting on her neck. This was far from my normal behavior, but what's the saying? Drastic times call for drastic measures. I kept at it knowing she'd have a nice hickey to show off at work on Monday. Maybe it would be Dr. Banks' turn to be jealous. No way, babe, I've missed this hot bodysuit bad, I need to ravish my wife. I kept chewing, she kept trying to wiggle free. Seriously, Ty, stop. You're going to leave a mark. What on earth has gotten into you? You've gotten under my skin, baby. True enough, I thought as I continued to lick and suck her neck. Come on, sweetness, I hissed in her ear, take me upstairs and show your loving husband a good time. She began to stop resisting, and I was worried for a split second she'd relent and give in. I needn't have worried. Fine, she replied in a tone bordering on disgust. My caveman husband has been gone for a few days, and now he's come home to claim his woman. Take me upstairs and satisfy yourself with my body, since I'm just a sexual release for your needs. I let her go and she turned around, backing away a step or two with a glare in her eyes. Well, what are you waiting for? It was clearly a challenge. Whoa, hold on a minute, babe, I responded, sounding surprised. I thought you missed me and would love me, longing for your gorgeous body. Didn't you tell me a few months back I should spice up our sex life a little and surprise you occasionally with something new? Surprise and new, yes. Neanderthal, no. What the hell, Ty? I bet you've bruised my neck and I'll be embarrassed in there on Monday. Now it was my turn to feign some anger. Well, I'm sorry, Lynn, you didn't clearly define what new meant. I'm always gentle and loving with you, so I thought a bit of innocent roughhousing might be fun for both of us. If you'll be so kind as to give me your approved list of new, I'll make sure to abide by your guidelines in my sexual spontaneity. That's not what I meant, Ty, it's just that you scared me. I guess I overreacted. I am so glad you're home and that you want me. Come on, big boy, let's go upstairs. With that she brushed by me, making sure her hip caressed my stick. As she slid past me, I gave her a very firm swat on the bum. Sounds good, baby, but I think I'll just bend you over the counter and put a smile on your face. I began to grab her hips, but she turned again, flushed with anger. No, Ty. Good lord, I'm not your sex toy to use. You're being so degrading. I let go instantly, turned and picked up my overnight bag and headed up the stairs. Just forget it, Lynn. Sorry for the hecky, maybe you can just tell the gang your idiot husband got carried away and grossly offended your sensibilities. I never talked to Lynn like this, and since my back was to her and I wasn't waiting for a response, I couldn't see the look on her face. All she said was, whatever. I unpacked my bag, grabbed a quick shower, changed into some Saturday grubs, and headed back down the stairs. Lynn was sitting at the kitchen table texting when I descended. She put her phone face down on the table and looked up at me. Her eyes were not forgiving, but the anger had dissipated. I had a pretty good idea with whom she'd been texting. Ty, Save it, Lynn. I've been gone for a week, 2 more days than I intended. All I could think about was getting back to you, but clearly my arrival and trying to spice things up a bit hasn't met with your approval. You were the one who told me to get home quickly so you could jump my bones. I apologize for not understanding you control how that should happen. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening, I'm going out. I didn't give her time to respond, but I'm sure she was taken aback. Even when we argued, I never stormed out or spoke in harsh tones. We disagreed for sure, but for the most part it was measured and respectful. I just headed out the door, hopped into my car and drove off. Okay, guys, this is the end of the first part. Second part will be uploaded tomorrow. Love you all, and see you soon. Merry Christmas.